The outer market of Orion Trade Station was loud, dirty, and full of careless people. Ships came and went every hour. Workers shouted. Metal doors slammed. Traders argued over prices. Bright signs flashed in many alien languages. But near the far end of Dock Lane 7, where the lights were weak and the air was cold, one small figure stood alone. She was a little alien girl. Her clothes were thin and torn. Her silver hair was wet from the cold rain falling through the broken roof panels. Her hands shook as she held a small cloth bag against her chest. Her big shining eyes moved from face to face, hoping someone would stop. No one did. Some people looked at her for 1 second and then looked away. Others walked faster. A few smiled in a cruel way. Everyone could see that she was scared. Everyone could see that she was alone. But no one wanted trouble. On that station, trouble could kill. Not far from her, a human man walked out of a repair bay with slow, tired steps. His name was Elias Vance. He was a station mechanic. He spent his days fixing broken cargo loaders, ship doors, and old engine parts that no one else wanted to touch. He was not rich, he was not powerful. He only wanted to go home, eat something warm, and sleep. He carried a bag of tools in one hand and a small food pack in the other. He almost passed the girl like everyone else. Almost. Then she moved. The little alien girl ran to him and grabbed the edge of his old coat with both hands. Elias stopped at once. He looked down. She looked up at him with wet eyes and trembling lips. She was trying hard not to cry. Her voice was small and broken. "Please be my dad," she whispered. "I won't misbehave." For 1 long second, Elias said nothing. The noise of the station felt far away now. The people nearby slowed down and turned to look. Some laughed. Some stared in shock. Elias could see fear all over the child's face. Not simple fear. Deep fear. The kind that came after pain, hunger, and many nights without kindness. He knelt in front of her. "What is your name?" he asked softly. The girl looked around like she was afraid someone would hear. Then she answered, "Lyra." Before Elias could say anything more, 2 station guards appeared at the end of the lane. Lyra's grip on his coat became tighter. Her whole body shook. And that was when Elias noticed the strange glowing mark on her wrist. It was not a common symbol. It was a noble seal. And suddenly Elias understood one dangerous truth. This was no ordinary lost child. Elias did not take Lyra to the police. He did not trust the guards after the fear he saw in her eyes. Instead, he brought her to his small room above an old repair shop near the lower engine blocks of the station. It was not a nice place. The walls were plain metal. The lights were dim. A pipe in the corner made strange sounds every few minutes. But it was warm. And for Lyra, that already felt strange. She stepped inside very slowly, like she was entering a place where she was not allowed to breathe too loudly. Her silver eyes moved across the room with care. A small table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed, tools on shelves, old machine parts in one corner. Nothing rich, nothing grand, nothing cruel either. Nothing. Elias closed the door and locked it. Then he put his tool bag down and took out the food pack he had bought for himself. It was only bread, hot soup, and a small piece of cooked station meat. Lyra stared at the food, but she did not move. "You can eat," Elias said. She looked at him unsure. "All of it?" she asked in a tiny voice. Elias frowned a little. "Yes, all of it." Lyra walked to the table as if she expected someone to stop her. She sat down very straight, very quiet. Then she picked up the bread with both hands and tore off the smallest piece possible. She ate slowly, too slowly, like a child who had learned that eating too much could bring pain. Elias stood still and watched her. Each time she took a bite, she looked up at him first. Not because she was rude, because she was checking if she had done something wrong. That hurt more than he expected. "You don't have to ask permission for every bite," he said. Lyra froze. Her fingers tightened around the bread. For 1 second, Elias thought she might cry, but she lowered her head and whispered, "Sorry." That one word filled the room with something heavy. Elias pulled a chair and sat across from her. He kept his voice calm. You do not need to say sorry for eating. Lyra looked at the soup. At home, if I touched things without asking, my stepmother got angry. Elias said nothing. Sometimes, Lyra added softly. She said I should be thankful I was allowed to stay at all. The room became very quiet. Then Lyra slowly pushed back one sleeve. A dark bruise marked her thin arm. Elias stared at it. And in that moment, his anger turned cold, because now he understood something clearly. Lyra had not run away from home. She had survived it. The station slept with one eye open. Even in the deep hours of the night, Orion Trade Station never became fully quiet. Somewhere far below, engines hummed like angry beasts. Metal walls shook with the passing of cargo trains. A warning alarm cried in the distance, then stopped. Inside Elias Vance's small room, the air was still. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed wearing one of Elias's old work shirts. It hung on her like a blanket. Her silver hair was dry now, but her small hand still held the cloth tight near her chest, as if something might be taken from her again. Elias was fixing the door lock. It was old, weak, and not made for trouble. He worked with careful hands, adding extra wire from a broken control panel. He was no soldier. He had no blaster rifle, no armor, no special training. But he knew one thing very well. Old machines could still fight if the right person touched them. You should sleep, he said without turning. Lyra looked at the floor. What if they come? Elias paused for a second. Then he kept working. Then they will have a bad night. Lyra almost smiled. Almost. Then the first knock came. Not a normal knock. 3 hard hits against the metal door. Elias stood at once. Lyra's face lost all color. The room became silent again, but it was the dangerous kind of silence. The kind that waited. Then a voice came from outside. Station security, open the door. Elias did not move. His eyes went to the cracked wall screen near the sink. He tapped it on. The outside camera flickered for a second, then showed the hallway. 3 men stood there. Only one wore a guard uniform. The other 2 wore dark coats and carried shock batons. Their faces were hard. Their eyes looked like men who had already decided how the night would end. Lyra made a small sound behind him. Elias turned. She was staring at the screen with wide eyes, shaking badly now. That's not station security, he said quietly. Lyra's lips moved before any sound came out. They work for her. Elias already knew who she meant. Another loud bang hit the door. Open it now, the false guard shouted. The child is stolen property. Elias's face changed. Not with fear, with anger. He looked around the room, thinking fast. 1 vent, 1 back service hatch, 1 weak front door, no clean way out. Then his eyes landed on his tool shelf. Wires, steam cells, repair gel, magnetic clamps. Not weapons. Good enough. He grabbed his tool belt and moved to the wall panel. What are you doing? Lyra whispered. Elias pulled loose 2 live cables and gave a grim little smile, showing them why no one should bother a human mechanic after midnight. Then the lock light turned red, and the men outside started cutting through the door. The first cut through the door was slow. A line of hot orange light burned across the metal as the tool outside pressed deeper. Smoke rose into the room. The smell of melted steel filled the air. Lyra stepped back until her shoulders touched the wall. Her breathing became fast and uneven. She looked small again, smaller than before, like fear was trying to erase her. Elias did not waste a second. He moved through the room with fast, calm hands. He opened a rusted toolbox, pulled out 2 wire coils, a pressure valve, and 3 magnetic clamps. Then he crossed to the leaking pipe in the corner and struck it with a heavy wrench. The old pipe burst open with a sharp hiss. Hot steam flooded the left side of the room. Lyra jumped. What are you doing? Elias crouched beside the broken pipe and fixed the clamps near the floor, making the room unfriendly. Outside, the men kept cutting. The line across the door became wider. A hard voice called through the smoke. Last chance, mechanic. Hand over the girl. Elias ignored him. He dragged an old repair battery to the center of the room and connected it to the broken wall light. Then he spread repair gel across the metal floor near the entrance. The gel looked harmless, almost like clear oil, but Elias knew what it did when power touched it. He glanced back at Lyra. "There is a small service hatch behind the bed," he said. "If I tell you to run, you crawl into it and do not stop." Lyra did not move. Her silver eyes stayed on him. "What about you?" Elias gave a short smile. "I work here. I know this station better than they do." The door suddenly shook. A glowing piece of metal dropped inward and crashed onto the floor. They were almost through. Elias stood beside the wall panel, one hand on the live cable, one eye on the door. His face was quiet now, focused, like a man fixing one more broken machine. The metal sheet finally gave way. The first hunter kicked the door open and rushed inside. His boot landed on the repair gel. At once, Elias slammed the live cable into the wall strip. Blue energy flashed across the floor. The hunter screamed and crashed down hard. The second man stepped in after him, only for a cloud of hot steam to burst into his face. He shouted and stumbled blind into the pipe clamps. They snapped shut around his leg, locking him to the floor. Then the fake guard charged through the smoke with a shock baton raised high. Lyra gasped. Elias picked up his wrench, turned once, and struck the man across the wrist so hard the baton flew into the wall. The room exploded with sparks. For one wild second, light filled every corner, and in that white-blue flash, Lyra saw something she had never seen before. Not a noble warrior, not a trained killer, just one tired human man, standing between her and the whole dark world. The room smelled of smoke, hot metal, and burned wires. One hunter was flat on the floor, shaking from the electric shock. Another was trapped near the steam pipe, shouting and trying to free his leg. The fake guard held his broken wrist and looked at Elias with open hate. But Elias did not wait to see what they would do next. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the bed. "Move," he said. Lyra was still staring at him in shock. Not because he had won, because he had fought for her at all. In her old life, adults gave orders. Adults used fear. Adults protected power, not children. But Elias had stood in front of danger like it was the most natural thing in the world. He dropped to one knee beside the bed and reached behind the frame. His fingers found a hidden latch under the wall panel. With one hard pull, a narrow metal hatch clicked open. Cold air rushed out from the dark space behind it. Lyra blinked. "There is a tunnel there?" "There is always a tunnel somewhere in old stations," Elias said. Behind them, the fake guard kicked the ruined door wider and shouted into a wrist radio. "They're still inside. Block the lower hall. Seal Dock Lane." Elias's face darkened. That was bad. Very bad. It meant more men were coming. He turned to Lyra and pointed into the hatch. "Get in first, crawl straight, do not stop unless I tell you." Lyra looked into the darkness. It was narrow, dusty, and full of old cable lines. It did not look safe. Then she looked back at the broken door. That looked worse. She nodded and climbed inside. Elias followed right behind her and pulled the hatch shut. At once the room vanished. The shouting outside became dull and far away. Now there was only darkness, and the sound of breathing. The tunnel was small. Elias had to bend low to move through it. Lyra crawled ahead, her small hands slipping on the cold metal surface. Dust covered her fingers. Old wires brushed her shoulders like dry insects. For a while, no one spoke. Then Lyra's quiet voice came from the dark. "Why did you help me?" Elias kept moving. "Because you needed help." "That is all?" He was silent for 1 second. Then he answered, "That should be enough." Lyra said nothing after that, but those words stayed with her. At the far end of the tunnel, a weak red light flickered through a vent cover. Elias carefully pushed it open and looked down into the station's lower maintenance corridor. It was empty, for now. He climbed out first, then helped Lyra down. The corridor stretched into shadow on both sides, full of pipes, cables, and old service tracks. Then Lyra's hand touched his arm. She was staring at the glowing mark on her own wrist. It was brighter now. much brighter. And before Elias could ask why, the corridor lights suddenly turned on by themselves, one by one, all the way to the end, as if something ahead of them had just awakened. The lower maintenance corridor had been dead for years. At least that was what Elias believed. No one used this part of Orion Trade Station anymore. The pipes were old. The wall panels were cracked. Half the cables hanging from the ceiling had no labels left on them. It was the kind of place people forgot. But now the corridor was waking up. One red light turned white, then the next, then the next. A line of cold light ran down the hallway like something invisible was moving ahead of them, touching each lamp one by one. The floor trembled under Lyra's feet. Deep inside the walls, old machines began to hum. Lyra stepped closer to Elias without thinking. He noticed, but said nothing. His eyes stayed on the corridor ahead. Tell me that is normal. Lyra looked at the glowing mark on her wrist. The noble seal was no longer a soft light. It was shining bright silver now, almost like a living thing. I do not think it is the hallway, she whispered. I think it is me. Elias turned to look at her. Lyra stared at her own hand as if it belonged to someone else. My father once said our blood could wake old systems. He said some doors listen to us. Some machines remember us. Elias gave a short, dry laugh. That would have been nice to know 10 seconds earlier. Before Lyra could answer, a heavy sound rolled through the corridor. Thunk, thunk, thunk. It came from far ahead. Not footsteps. Something bigger. Something mechanical. Elias quickly pulled Lyra behind a wide support column and peered into the light. At the far end of the corridor, an ancient security unit rose from a hidden wall chamber. Dust fell from its metal shoulders. Its eyes burned pale blue. One massive arm ended in a shield plate. The other ended in a weapon barrel so old it looked older than the station itself. Lyra grabbed Elias's sleeve. Did I call that? Looks like you called something, he muttered. The machine took one heavy step forward, then another. Its head turned slowly left and right as if searching. Elias's hand moved to the wrench on his belt, though he knew it would do almost nothing against a machine like that. The security unit stopped. Its glowing eyes locked onto Lyra. For one terrible second, neither of them breathed. Then the machine lowered its weapon. A deep voice, cracked with age, filled the corridor. Bloodline recognized. Lyra's eyes widened. The machine stepped closer, then bent one knee like an old knight before a queen. Air confirmed, awaiting command. Elias looked from the giant machine to the little girl beside him. A few minutes ago they had been running like hunted rats through the walls. Now an ancient war machine was kneeling in front of her, and from somewhere above them, alarm sirens began to scream across the station. The old war machine knelt in the center of the corridor like a giant made of iron and memory. Its body was covered in dust, old battle marks and faded royal symbols. Blue light moved through the cracks in its armor like blood moving through veins. The floor beneath it shook each time it adjusted its weight. Lyra looked so small in front of it. Too small. She was only a frightened child in an oversized workshirt, standing in an abandoned corridor with a human mechanic beside her. But the machine did not see a frightened child. It saw a ruler's blood. It saw someone important. Its voice came again, deep and rough from long silence. Air confirmed. Awaiting command. Lyra stared without moving. Elias stared too, but for a different reason. He had spent his whole life fixing broken cargo lifts, damaged vents, and station doors that no one cared about. He knew old systems. He knew old metal. But this machine was older than anything he had ever seen. It was not station security. It was something built for war, something built to protect, and right now, it belonged to Lyra. The alarm sirens above screamed louder. Red warning lights flashed across the upper vents. Somewhere far behind them, metal doors slammed shut through the station. The hunters had noticed something was wrong. Elias stepped closer to Lyra and kept his voice low. If that thing is really listening to you, now would be a very good time to tell it to help us. Lyra swallowed hard. Her silver eyes moved from Elias to the machine and back again. What if it does not obey? She whispered. Elias looked at the broken walls, the flashing lights, and the dark tunnel behind them. "Then," he said, "this gets much worse." The machine slowly raised its head, still waiting. Lyra took one small step forward. Her hands were shaking again, but this time she did not hide them. The glowing seal on her wrist shined brighter, filling the corridor with soft silver light. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For a second, fear returned to her face. The old fear. The fear taught by cruel people. The fear that told her she was weak, unwanted, and wrong. Then Elias placed one hand gently on her shoulder. That changed everything. Lyra looked up at him. He gave only one small nod. Nothing big. No speech. No grand promise. Just that one simple look that said he believed in her. Lyra faced the machine again and lifted her chin. "Protect us," she said in a quiet but clear voice. The war machine rose at once. Its full height filled the corridor. Its shield arm locked into place. Its weapon arm turned toward the tunnel behind them. Then the old machine spoke one final line. "By blood and bond, the air will not fall." And just as the first armed hunters rushed into the corridor, Elias understood one chilling truth. This was no longer a rescue. It was the beginning of a war.